Not only was that a lovely lunch sponsored by PwC, but it was fun. I loved that speed dating concept, tech crunch. And using the analogy of speed dating, I want to date all of them. It's great. It was a great idea, great presentations, and I am in awe of someone who can deliver a pitch in 90 seconds, and in one case in 70 seconds. I remember when I first started working at the National News, and I put my first 2-minute story on, and I called my mom, and I said, "Mom, did you see my story?" She said, "Yes, dear. What did you do the rest of the day?" So it kind of feels like that, a 90-second presentation of probably 3 years of, breakneck work, but well done to all of them. All right, our afternoon panel. It's called Kingdoms and Communities, and it's going to look at how social media has transformed the way content's created and marketed, how fans become engaged and active communities, and how or whether those communities can translate into revenue. And that's the big question, isn't it? The moderator of our panel this afternoon, this one, is Chris Unwin. He's the founder of Free Agency. That's a social content studio that produces digital entertainment. And I should, just before I go on, but I've been asked to remind you that a lot of these bios of the speakers can be reached on this conference app, eventmobi.com. I think it's up, it will be up on the screen when we go back to the main screen. Please use that app to see who is talking to you, the context around them. Also, don't forget there's feedback on that app, and we really need your feedback throughout the day. So check out that app and make sure that you're using it. So moving on again with Chris, the founder of Free Agency, producing digital entertainment. It's a progressive approach to content co-creation, and it helps premium brands evolve into publishers in collaboration with a network of opinion leaders in music, fashion, and culture. Over a decade of experience in branded digital content, Chris has helped leading advertisers and media brands like Much Music and MTV create industry-leading co-branded interactive concerts, user-generated content campaigns, and web series. To kick off this panel, though, we're going to first hear one of our case studies from Andrew Gennady. Andrew, aka Gunnarolla, is a video producer and a musician based here in Toronto, most widely known for videos such as Canadian Please and the comic Song. Andrew has built an impressive engaged following on YouTube, 12 million views on YouTube. It's amazing. 68,000 subscribers, and he's traveled all across North America, Australia, and Asia in support of his channel. He was senior multimedia producer for the Toronto International Film Festival, where he now co-hosts a 12-hour live variety show during Scotiabank's Nuit Blanche. In 2013, Andrew was voted, never mind, beauty pageants, he was voted Digital Personality of the Year at the Digi Awards. So, please welcome Andrew Gennady.
Hello, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Andrew, also known as Gunnarolla, and they've listed my title as YouTube sensation, so I guess I'll take that. A couple years ago, I had an accidental international hit called Canadian Please. It was viewed around the world, and since then, I've been able to quit my real person job, travel the world, and do what I love. I make a lot of different kind of content on YouTube, but I specialize mainly on music and content that really engages the viewers. So I guess we'll take a look at that now. Excellent to combat disease. Yeah, I know that you want to be Canadian, please. Shouldn't they have real Canadians in the video instead of Asian? I'm Asian? Oh my God. Cette chanson a été créée par des fans de Gunnarolla. Ich habe Sauerkraut in meinen Lederhosen. Ich habe Sauerkraut in meinen Lederhosen. Oh, you were my best friend. Don't wanna lose you again.
drastic. How can you hate a font that's so fantastic?
Slanted is the new italic.
Comic Sans is the best font in the world. If you want your designs to look like they're done by little girls, Comic Sans best used in moderation. Come on, join me, the Comic Sans Nation.
So now that we've established that we're all sitting on the same platform, literally and figuratively, what we're going to discuss today is about, we'll talk about the platforms that each of these individuals and their organizations are on and engaging communities with, but most importantly, where they see their businesses. And we're talking about Andrew as a business. He's not a businessman, he's a businessman. Where they see their businesses and their cultural engagement moving forward. So why don't we start with you, Andrew? What motivated you to start posting on YouTube in the first place? What was your first video? And yeah, kind of walk us through how that happened.
Right, so I actually did a degree and diploma in media and cultural studies and television broadcasting at Western and Fanshawe. So in 2006, 2007, YouTube just seemed like a great platform to upload stuff that I was working on and to share it with friends. There was no monetization plan in place. I didn't have aspirations to be famous or to go viral, anything like that. So it was really just for myself and for my friends and family. It happened in 2009, as we were making these music videos for fun, that Canadian Please had all the ingredients, I think, for a viral video. It was a catchy song, really compelling visuals, and it was really timely. It was just a week before Canada Day. So that spread through email, it was on the news. And at that point, I still was not thinking that YouTube would be like a career path for me. I was still very focused on completing my studies. I went on to work as the full-time video producer at TIFF, which is a job that I enjoyed a lot. But the desire, I think, to keep working on my own stuff, to travel, and I was building this community that grew stronger. So I made the decision 2 years ago to leave a stable, permanent, full-time job, and I've just been kind of working on a lot of different things since.
Very cool. So how did you build your digital community? And I guess what I'm saying is, was there a certain point where you realized that you were a YouTuber and started to engage digital community management in a more kind of conscious manner, rather than just throwing stuff up on the web?
Yeah, well, when Canadian Please went viral, we were dealing now with an audience that wasn't necessarily my own, right? So we started to look a lot at the comments we were getting and answering people's questions and engaging with them, and then getting them to help us share other work that we were producing. So yeah, I think had it not been for having a big international success like that, maybe my attitude toward YouTube would be a little different. But a lot of it was just, people were asking questions they wanted to know, or I was responding to a lot of negative feedback as well, and that played a part.
Let's touch on that negative feedback.
Yeah.
No, because this is an interesting thing. So for those that don't know, a lot of people were surprised that there are Asian people in Canada, and that Andrew singing a song about being Canadian and in a Mountie costume spurred some all kinds of kind of spammy comments online. From that point, did you see yourself as a cultural commentator in some way, or can you comment on that?
It was frustrating because I was born in London, Ontario. I went to a French school for 13 years. I was on an episode of Degrassi, and we made this.
Everything right.
But we made this Canadian anthem. Like, what do you need me to do to prove to you that I love Canada and that I'm Canadian? Like, what more do I need to do? But yeah, I mean, I had not thought a lot about those issues of identity and stereotypes, and they kind of informed a lot of the content that I made after that. I took some of those negative comments that were like, go back to your own country, you chink this, da-da-da-da, and I kind of turned that around into something more positive. And actually, I was featured in a story on CBC, so I got a lot of attention that way, which I think helped to build an audience of people who said, you know what, I kind of I relate to what you're going through, and I understand, we should all be proud to be Canadian. Doesn't matter, if you're Asian, whatever you are.
Mm-hmm. I think what's interesting about that is to kind of acknowledge that a guy from London, Ontario posting on YouTube now becomes a part of the voice of our media culture and is investigating ideas of Canadian identity from his YouTube channel.
It's really cool they've used that video. Like I've gotten messages from people who watched that video in their university course on Canadian identity, or in their high school class, their teacher showed it to them. So we had no idea at the time what kind of cultural impact it would have or what kind of studies would come out of it, but it's really cool.
Got it. Okay, so with Tessa is one of those people that when you like creep her LinkedIn profile, you feel like really small. Long list of accomplishments and constantly pushing the bar forward, but now Director of Digital at CBC. So what is your role, and what is your kind of department's mandate at the CBC?
So it's actually not even really a department. It's a very small little group of us that are technically involved in the digital, that are named that. Director of Digital is I'm actually kind of air traffic control. I kind of feel that that's the role, making sure that everything is sort of going in the right direction. Everybody at CBC is somehow involved in some aspect of digital production, distribution, community building, community management. Everybody is a marketer of our content that works for the company, that produces content for the company. CBC at its core is a storyteller. That's what we do. And we will work with anyone that has a story to tell and figure out ways to, like we were talking earlier with, or Clive was speaking earlier, and Julie Bristow, my former colleague, formerly of CBC as well, was saying it's a matter of like just finding the right content, the right place, and the right time to get it out. And part of that is social syndication or distribution, as you called it. And we'll work with YouTubers. We're working with you in some capacity. We're working with another YouTuber, ASAP Science, another phenomenal story of success of Canadian YouTube content creators. So I guess it's digital is just in the DNA of CBC, is what I want to say, and how we get our content out, community is an enormous piece of that piece.
It's interesting. It's showing that in a way that the social department is not just the intern that's like on the old laptop in the corner anymore. No, and that social and digital have matured and are now becoming just a part of the business and storytelling in general.
Yeah, if you're a storyteller, you need to be active in the space if you're trying to get your content found or seen by people beyond just the TV screen.
So that also means in a way that the community becomes producers of content as well. Yeah. Can you speak to that?
So what I would say around that is when the story is right that we're trying to tell, and you can cast the audience in a meaningful role, that's when you hit the sweet spot of so when we've had a lot of success, I would say, in our unscripted reality programming space around that. We were, and we spoke earlier, or one of the panelists spoke earlier about how American Idol was the first to give the audience a meaningful role in the story of that program. But what we did was then, once we realized Facebook and Twitter were starting to become places that people were discovering content and discovering what's on TV, we decided, how do we actually use social to be a critical piece of the story that we're trying to tell. So we've done it with shows like Battle of the Blades most recently. How do we give the audience a role, a meaningful role in the show? So you had to earn your votes using community building techniques. We had you going and doing stuff in real world and also online on social platforms that we then tracked and monitored, and then you would earn your votes based on that activity. And I want to say, too, real world is incredibly important. Social tools, social platforms are great indicators of what's happening out in the real world, but really it is the real world kitchen table conversations that are driving awareness and audience engagement of the story that you're trying to tell. So I like to think of Twitter and Facebook as the thermometer. It's not, it's not making it hot outside, but it's telling you how hot it is outside, if that makes any sense, yeah.
And so that means that consumer segmenting within the community is not just kind of best practices as a marketer, but it is now a part of the storytelling process. So
when the story makes sense, right? Like if you're willing to let the audience, you're willing to cast the audience to have a meaningful role in the story. Yeah. If you're not willing, or you're a producer, you're like, I'm not really sure we want to go there, it's probably not the right story or the right time for you to do it. But if you can, if everybody's all in going, yes, we want the audience to have a critical role in the story that we're trying to tell, then it will very likely work.
Got it.
You're at least going to get closer to success.
Got it. I'm going to mysteriously skip Jeffrey for a moment. Whoa. And so Nassim, with Kids Can Press, we were talking before, so there's, I believe it's show and tell. You have something to show us?
Yeah, well, I have my puppet.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're actually going to be doing a puppet show to represent the inherent conflicts between the institution and the network in Ontario media. So is this the institution, or is this the open network, the squirrel? I guess he's the open network. He's looking for a nut. Okay, so crowd. We were talking about segmenting before. So there's Franklin the turtle.
Yes, there's Franklin the turtle, there's Scaredy Squirrel, there's Kids Can Press. We're talking about the fact that it feels like people don't necessarily come to Kids Can Press for content. They would want content on a particular brand or author. So in that way, as far as our social media channels go, it's the Facebook of Franklin, page, and also I said the Facebook, I'm so sorry. It's Franklin's Facebook page and Scaredy's Facebook page that are really the communities of interest. They want to talk about their favorite books, they want to talk about, or in Franklin, their favorite books and shows, apps, all of those things. On Scaredy's Facebook page, there's a very small but mighty group. There's only about 12,000 fans on that page, but the engagement is so high. Their own version of fan art is going to be taking a Scaredy Squirrel puppet on their vacation and taking a photo and posting it for us. We get actual fan art that children have drawn. We get parents, teachers, librarians dressing up as Scaredy Squirrel for Halloween, birthday cakes designed in Scaredy Squirrel's face, all of this, and they love to share these things on that page. So it's a lot of the content comes from them, not necessarily from us.
Got it. So a big part of kind of driving the fire of community engagement is by understanding the verticals of passion points and really kind of engaging against those separate verticals rather than under the guise of, in this instance, a publisher.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Interesting. And so that enables you as the publishing industry is obviously evolving at a very rapid rate. You're then able to, go to an app, go to an ebook, go to merchandising, and continually product develop against those verticals?
Yeah, I mean, all of those, the print books are still our core business. We have ebooks. We've dabbled in a bit of apps, but that's not necessarily still our core business. Even the ebook world, at least in children's, is still taking off. So we're using the social media to either drive brand awareness, let them know about new print books, and then if there is an ebook available, presenting that as well.
Got it. How do you market to kids? As someone that came from much music, I know this is obviously like many times a touchy subject. Do you market to kids, or are parents or?
Yeah, we go through parents, teachers, librarians. In the cases where I feel like we can, because that's something I always want to figure out is how can we get to kids, because to me they are the tastemakers. Yeah. They're the ones going to the library and saying, do you have Scaredy Squirrel or do you have Franklin or whatever it is. So a library, public library is going to order 40 books, for all their however many branches, if there's a demand of, the parents and the kids asking for that. So in that way, things that we can create that lend themselves to kids driving is video content. So for example, we did a book trailer for Scaredy Squirrel, but we wanted to do something different because I thought, a book trailer is a commercial, and unless it's a really irreverent commercial, it's not going to get that many eyes on it. So we did a public service announcement for Scaredy Squirrel's top 3 tips for Halloween. So that was in a way of us leveraging video to do something different that was actually a piece of content in of itself, even though it existed to promote Scaredy Squirrel Prepares for Halloween.
So social is enabling you, whereas historically you may have been marketing institutionally or to the parents, to actually be a part of youth culture and be marketing to and engaging with children more directly. Yeah. Okay, got it. So, mysterious Jeffrey Remedios, the Wizard of Oz of the independent music industry. I know, tough shoes to fill. What I found interesting here is that we're talking about Kids Can Press and the power of segmenting your community and understanding passion points, whereas in arts and crafts, that's something that's obviously the case based on your roster of artists that have their rabid fan base. But what you've been able to do is really build the arts and crafts brand as a community and a brand. So let me ask you this. Do you define yourself as a record company, a management company, or are you something bigger and greater?
Okay.
Not you, arts and crafts.
All right, no pressure. Thanks, Chris. You know, when we started Arts and Crafts 10 years ago, I started it on the back of Broken Social Scene. My partner in the company is Kevin Drew, the principal in Broken Social Scene. And we said, being a record company would not be the right model for us to just move forward. The world was transforming digitally. This is 2002, 2003. Opportunities were going to be afforded to us because of the digital transformation would break down some artificial walls that held small companies out of large promotion systems. So we could take advantage of that if we could speak holistically for music. I don't want to take this on a music industry total spin, but historically the music industry built on all kinds of unethical business practice, therefore grew as an industry, not so much as one industry, but sort of as 3 or 4 siloed industries with checks and balances against each other. So you have managers, publishers, record companies, merchandisers, all separate businesses. You know, I used to say, working, like if you wanted to, if the CBC wanted to use one of our songs, it would be akin to a marketplace where someone wants to buy a car, but they have to buy the car from one company, the tires from another company. Only one set of tires fit on one car, and those 2 companies don't talk, and there's no price precedent. And that's still music today, by and large. So when we started, we said we needed to work kind of holistically with artists and help them just build an ecosystem, us and them with our backs against each other, kind of protecting themselves. So here we are 10 years later, and it's now for us more about us creating platforms and opportunities for artists to connect with fans and potential fans. And it's less so about how we do that than the fact that we are actually doing that. So that manifests itself as with us as a record company, certainly. And as an artist manager, we publish songs. And if there's any game developers here, magazines, broadcasters, anyone that's looking for music, I got some, please come see me. We'll do a deal. We have something at every price, including free. And our goal is to help artists subsist as they do this, make a living as they connect as their art connects. How does our art connect? You build communities. You build communities around the artist. We've done that. We've worked to do that by building a community around arts and crafts concurrently. So there's an arts and crafts community, and then by extension, communities around each of our artists. And we're tourists who cheat. We're not beholden to any one platform, but we'll use them all. So Facebook's important to us, but if we focused on Facebook, then we'd be building our house on rented land. We are focused on building our own communities, and we'll use Facebook where appropriate. We'll work so that our artists can make a living at their music, and if not, they'll find ways to get through until we get them there. Like, for example, Charles Spearin, who's an amazing musician, plays in Broken Social Scene and a bunch of other bands. Through our formative years of Broken Social Scene, was in Franklin the Turtles' touring backing band.
Yes. And, synchronicity.
And then otherwise we just experiment. We try different things. I don't know if Stuart from Antica's here, but hi, Stuart. But we've been working with Stuart and his team on a project where we're trying to build communities around artists, around festivals, or the live experience, because you're absolutely right. It's about the real world experience, and how the real world translates online. So, in partnership with the CBC, I'm getting it all, right?
Points.
We gotta talk. We'll find something to do for sure. In partnership with the CBC, using Stuart's amazing production company and tech, we've just finished piloting a program where we shot 2 artists at the Rifflandia Festival out in Victoria, Stars and Classified, and we combined crowdsourced video footage with professionally shot video footage. And we used the communities of the artist and the festival to promote engagement to get the footage in, and have then put it together into kind of a compelling offering, which is then broadcast on CBC Music. And the CBC has commissioned a series for 2014. So the pilot, at least has gotten kind of through piloting phase. And it's just about, experimentation in building platforms and building communities around those platforms.
Got it. So
yes?
Yes.
No?
No, but what's interesting about that, and I think is very important, I mean, what we're doing with Free Agency is the same kind of thing of connecting creators that are driven by passion points, be it in music and fashion and culture, and helping them align strategically with media companies and brands. But none of that works if it's not driven by pure passion. A love of squirrels, music, be it any of the various CBC show franchises, and then, Andrew, all of the things that have driven your creative process. And what's interesting to me is we look at all of these different platforms to use and business models and monetization and all of these things, is that if we lose sight of the reasons why we're doing it in the first place, the community is gone. So I think that's something that definitely shines through from everything that we've heard so far. So on that note, we're already answering some of my questions about the qualitative definitions of success. Hopefully we've gotten that, but what are the quantitative factors? Andrew, why don't we start with you? What is your success dashboard?
I mean, I look at views and I look at subscribers because those relate directly to how much money I'm going to get from like ad placements. But I've also learned, I think, recently it's a little bit unpredictable. And I'm at the mercy of a lot of, the YouTube design changes, and my content gets buried and that kind of thing. So I've really started to ask myself, am I proud of what I've made? Do people like it? Are people engaging with it? Are they sharing it? And, am I happy? Can I pay my rent? Is this going somewhere? So those are kind of the things that I'm focusing on right now. And I have a goal to travel more, and last year I was very lucky to work with different corporations that sent us on a few trips. And the audience that I do have that's stuck around for 5, 6, 7 years, they're still loving the stuff that I make, they're still sharing it. I was recently in Tokyo, we had a meetup there. I was recently in New York, we had a meetup there during the winter storm. So people are coming out to these things, and it's great.
So now that it's interesting because you actually, from a YouTube perspective, had a very explicit dashboard for success. When you self-identify as a YouTuber and your focus is on that platform, you actually have a great tool at your disposal. But now is the question about what are all of the platforms at my disposal, including real life, including the like, and you're looking beyond. Is there a life past YouTube?
I hope so. I mean, I've always hesitated to define myself as a YouTuber. The majority of the creative content that I'm making, for sure, goes on YouTube and Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, Vine. All these platforms kind of exist for me with the aim to draw people back to the YouTube space. But I think what's going on in that space now, it's very clear to me that that's not where I want to end up forever. I've recently started hosting live shows with Tiff. We've started doing these live appearances, and I think, I'm making a lot of music. That music doesn't have to live on YouTube. For sure, YouTube is always going to be part of what I do, but I don't think that I'm exclusively a YouTuber.
Got it. Tessa, from your perspective, what is your success dashboard on a project-to-project basis, but also kind of on a long-term scale?
So as air traffic control, it's very exciting. We actually do have like a digital KPI process where with every project we try to identify what are the things that we can actually measure. What are we trying to do with this thing, this story that we're trying to tell, and what are the things that we can measure to define whether or not we succeeded in reaching whatever that goal was. So that's going to vary by every single one. But if I raise that at like the 100,000-foot level, I really sound like a pilot. Ultimately what we want to do with as many of our projects as possible is to have a meaningful, emotional touch point with Canadians. And however we measure or not, whether or not we've actually done that, it might be, Facebook Insights, it might be YouTube views or whatever it is, or shares, which then ultimately, hopefully, will translate into mass audience appeal. So we're always looking at individual project, what is the thing that we're trying to do, what are the measuring pieces that we can track on it to then learn from. Essentially, that's ultimately the point of that, is to try to suck the marrow out of every single bone that we're involved with, to try to really, learn from this to what we learned on Battle of Blades, we're applying to what we're doing with the Olympics, and then that will be applied to next thing. And then at the larger level, have deep, meaningful engagement, emotional touch points with audience, which is ultimately what any storyteller wants to do, is have an emotional relationship with the audience.
Do you find now that you touched on social being kind of the thermometer rather than the weather itself?
And I say that because a lot of people, you hear the things about, Nielsen says, if you have this much trending on Twitter the minute before broadcast, you'll see a ratings increase of blah, blah, blah. I'm not convinced that those correlations actually are as distinct as that yet. Maybe they will get to that point, but we've not yet. Maybe it's the Canadian landscape too. We've not been able to have that kind of indicative relationship. I do believe, though, that social is representative of that. And if you're really interested in this stuff, read up on dark social. It sounds like sinister, but it's actually, dark social is just stuff that you can't, log into a dashboard and see what's going on, but is all of the stuff that's happening on email and at kitchen tables, stuff that nobody can actually track, even Google. but if you are giving your audience a meaningful role and then you're giving them something to talk about, whether it's because it's controversial or emotionally engaging to them, you're probably having an enormous impact, and then that's probably going to be reflected in your ratings if it's TV, or your views if it's YouTube or whatever.
Got it. So you touch on dark social, this idea that this true metric of culture and cultural engagement, and its affinity or connection to your properties. We know that data, big data, is huge. We know that Twitter and Facebook are all kind of circling around the TV business. Are people within the organization at CBC answering your emails and your calls faster these days than a couple years ago?
Yes, and I'd also say that we're trying to be as responsive as we can be in those platforms as well, because if you are talking to people on public-facing social platforms, you're probably answering the one question that one person had for 100 or maybe 1,000 other people. So, got it. Yes.
Got it. Very cool. I know that we're just about at Q&A. Jeffrey, one thing I'm curious about, and you guys, either of you can chime in, because I think that and you can arm wrestle for who gets to answer with our minute that remains. The recording industry is increasingly being redefined, and the publishing industry is being redefined. Do either of you feel anchored in the success of the kind of products that used to sell, or are you very much open-minded towards where it all goes? Throw an open question to two people and see what happens. Do you feel that your success in print is a burden as it relates to innovation?
No. But you're talking to someone who loves books, so to me, I'm like, what? You don't want to look at the print book? But then I have my colleague who makes ebooks in the audience, so I have to say that. But then when we look at the digital ebooks with the read-along and the interactivity, you're like, that's super cool too. So to me, it's more about what story, going back to story, does a particular idea lend itself better to? Because some things, like, if they're a very interactive book within the page, they can lend themselves to a great app or ebook. So.
Got it. So I suppose to say at the end of the day, what we now have, because we are closer to our audience through the various channels and dashboards, we have the opportunity to know what our audience expects and wants of us. And the opportunity is there from a business and a content creation perspective to listen and to follow, which is kind of an interesting thing as it relates to many businesses that used to kind of just push a product out to a consumer. So, questions, any questions from the gang? I'm sure you guys can do a better job than me.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
This is a question for Andrew. I was sort of curious about the viral Canadian Please, how it happened, the timeline, how you went from 1 to 1 million, 1 million to 2 million, And to what degree, once it's going, can you control it, can you feed it, can you shape it? And was it national, international?
Right. So we produced the song and the video in like a 48-hour time span in London on like one of the hottest days. But I think it was about a week before Canada Day. And at that point, I did have a little bit of an audience. I had grown an audience from a video that had been popular before that. But we actually didn't do a lot to seed it or to aggressively tweet it at anyone. We got a big bump when CTV News somehow got it. I have no idea to this day how that happened. But once it was picked up on traditional media, that's when we started to get like parents, grandma, grandpa, emailing it around. I lost my train of thought there. What was the rest of your question? Controlling it. It was also actually, someone had ripped it and uploaded it to stupidvideos.com. And MSN Today picked that up. So there was a pop-up when you use MSN Messenger. And so I know we got a ton of views from that as well.
Sorry. I did the ICQ noise. Embarrassing.
But actually, yeah, it's nearing 4 million views on YouTube, which today is not a huge number when you look at the viral videos they have today. But I do know that we had a lot of views on other sites as well. It was on College Humor. It was all over the place. Where I think today, now when you hear about a viral video, it's like it was viral on YouTube. But ours was it was everywhere. Yeah. I mean, it was huge around Canada Day, and maybe for like 2 months after that, and it just kept going. A lot of expats, and every year we get a pickup, but I'm not sure of the exact timeline on that. I just know that we produced the video a week before. It blew up on Canada Day. It was everywhere for like 2 months, died down, got picked up again in October randomly. I don't know why. And then every year, kind of as it nears Canada Day, we see a pickup there.
It seems like maybe a basic thing to acknowledge, but you launched a video about Canadian identity like a day before Canada Day. Is part of your programming plan to look at things that will be a part of kind of popular consideration so that people will be
You
more
should
likely?
do that. I mean, I've done another video about, it was around the time of Valentine's Day, and it wasn't as successful. So it's kind of, you can plan, but there's also that weird timing luck thing.
You've all stressed the importance of shaping that community and riding that momentum. Is there anything that you plan for? What do you do when the momentum stops? And is there anything you can do to plan for it?
Are any of you planning for stopped momentum?
Or is that just a really scary thing that you just avoid thinking about?
One of the things that we try to do is move communities from one title to another, if possible. So when I referenced what we learned from Battle of Blades, we're applying to the Olympics, we're also trying desperately to get people that are figure skating fans that were part of that community aware that here's this other thing that we're doing over here, so please come and join us there and let's continue the conversation.
It doesn't always work.
Yeah, no, totally.
You gotta try fast, fail fast,
yeah.
Iterate fast, try again. A key metric for us can be the speed of SoundCloud listens. So you put a new song into the marketplace, how quickly are people listening to it? And as much, we could love some songs, and if the pickup isn't there, you don't want to spend good money after bad. So there's like this kind of balance of is it just it needs to get into other places, or do you need to work on the creative?
Does that mean that you release, do you release music sooner? I guess the album used to come out in a single cycle would happen. Now it's more about release some music and maybe feel it out.
The thing about the music industry today is that there are no rules. So there's no formula. I think a lot about aggregated past practice. Like, you can learn to change a tire, and the first time you change a tire, it might take you 2 hours, and if you change 100 tires, 1 tire per day for 100 days, you'll get pretty damn good at changing tires. But in music, and I think with a lot of the digital ecosystem, like the rules are changing underneath. So you have to kind of learn how to learn. And so look at each situation and look at the variables and who is this artist, who is their audience, where does their audience live, what's the best engagement point for this audience? Is it a small but heavily loyal audience that you can, that are looking for premium products? Is it a diverse, disparate, but not that engaged audience, and or something in between?
Which goes back to the idea that listening and empathy and then critical faculties at evaluating platforms are really like the kind of key pieces now.
I think you just said that in a much smarter way than I.
I didn't have a car analogy though. Is there any more on buttons? Oh, there.
Hi there. Jeff, you might have touched on this a little bit in your last comment, but Chris, you spoke about the success dashboard and what it looks like. Jeffrey, I'm just curious how your success dashboard has changed from when you started the company 10 years ago.
Yeah, great question. We try to look at each artist uniquely and success of an artist measured by their own benchmarks that we set together. Artistic success is different for everybody. At Arts and Crafts, a part of our core of our ethos is that we want to work with interesting, authentic artists. We want to release music and work with music that we feel is going to age well. And we want to help the artists creating that music build their communities, build an ecosystem that fits their expectations. But that's different for everybody. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
The timer is counting up now. We're earning time to ask questions. Or are we done? Where's God?
So all of you guys have very established platforms of people following you and interested in what you do. But for somebody who is, say, a digital marketer who might be starting from square one, maybe, who doesn't really have that established audience yet, who doesn't quite know the parameters of who's following them, what kind of tips would you give to start out and then start building out from there?
I feel like I would need to know what the product was.
That's a big part of it, knowing what the...
Well, strategy is sort of, to me, based on knowing your product and then knowing your audience, so if that would be helpful. But that's...
Sure. Let's say, for example, you're in broadcasting or, well, everyone is doing something a bit different here, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll throw something at it. Is
sure.
that part of it is that you as an organization or an entity may not have distribution or a community, but there will be others that have their own communities. So I think it's about looking at, and the YouTube ecosystem is something that's interesting. You'll look at Andrew's track record, a lot of it is collaboration. A lot of it is working with other people that have their own audiences that share the same ethos. And that is a way, if we look at our peers or the people that we admire or that we want to kind of connect with, their audiences aggregated can be your audience.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. All right, we're at zeros.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you, Chris. Thank you, panel.
Thank you,
Really
guys.
interesting.
Cheers.
Fascinating discussion and some great video, finally, when we got to it. Some basic messages there. I'm always struck by some of the simpler lines that we all have to think about. Andrew made mention of them. Launch content, engage and build your audience, and then respond to that audience. And I know Tessa has been telling us news developers for a long time now that we have to engage and respond, primarily respond to our audience because they expect it. I think what we didn't talk about here, and perhaps what you face when you go out to clients from more traditional industries, is there's a cultural catch-up going on in this industry. And by that I mean, people in Tessa's department have had to infiltrate the rest of the company that's you know, coming up to where digital is, I can say not only is it the DNA of CBC, but digital first is our platform in no matter what we do. We now all think about where do we go digitally first. But there is a, you know, a culture shift that's required in some of these legacy companies and industries, and it's not always easy to bridge those, and it's certainly worth something to think about.